All right, parents, here we go again. It's the Ask Dr. Tony episode. This is the Experience Miracles podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, an expert in pediatrics, neurodevelopmental disorders, and drug-free, nervous system-focused healthcare. On this weekly episode, I'll be addressing the top questions on every parent's mind. If there's one thing we love and welcome, it's parents who never stop learning, asking the hard questions, and advocating for your kiddos like none other. So get ready for some real talk, real-life clinical and parenting experience, and real easy to understand answers that will help your family take action and get to that next level of health and healing. You ask, I answer. Let's dive into today's episode. This question that we're going to jam on here tonight about neurological detoxing, and specifically we're going to talk about when you start nervous system focused chiropractic care. It's not always smooth. It's not always straightforward. And so we've been making one of the best responses and engagement we got. And really just a lot of you had reached out and asked questions about this, and then had asked questions about also what happens when you're stuck, when your kiddo is healing, but then hits a plateau, when they're developing, but then they hit a plateau or they hit regression. And so those plateaus, those regression conversations continue to be some of our most, what would be the word, popular, helpful, therefore, to you conversations, along with detoxing. So it's an evening edition. We're jamming in here and we're tackling that question that we get a ton, understandably so. Hey, we've started care. We're so excited. Things are moving in the right direction. Some things are moving in the right direction, but we also see some things that feel like they're moving in the wrong direction. Some things are getting worse. Our child is detoxing. So what I want to do today is dive deep into why these neurological detoxes, the absolute positive vast majority of the time, are a good thing. And they are actually progression, so progress, neurological healing, development, gut function, immune function, these things getting back online and getting better. So it's a really tough conversation to understand. So I want you to really listen to this one all the way through, maybe 3 times over, because it's been about almost 2 decades of taking care of kids. And I remember the first time I ever sat down at my computer and I wrote out the neurological detox conversation. I myself, as a doc who is trained on this and understands this and experiences and sees this all the time in practice, I literally had to write it out paragraph by paragraph, bullet point by bullet point to make sense of it. And so also everybody listening and tuning into this one, we just published a very updated, so as I do with every single time, I get on here and we go deep into a topic, I don't just pull it out of you-know-what and start talking into the mic. I spend hours really organizing some notes, some outlines. Usually, I take my podcast outline and I write an entire updated article. So if you haven't spent any time on our website yet, PXDocs, so PXDocs.com, I just realized that, I play Scrabble with my kids a lot this winter. I should use, PX Docs and pediatric experience. I don't know if our terms are Scrabble worthy, like if the Scrabble dictionary would allow it, but X is worth 10 points if you played Scrabble. So there you go. Little look into my Raging Bull ADHD brain, which long time frequent listeners are pretty used to on this. But if you haven't spent time on the website, this episode, if you will, this deep dive into exactly why neurological detoxes 99% of the time are a very good thing and actually sign of progress and healing. It's written out and it's bullet pointed and it's organized. We're going to talk about what's happening when the gut and the microbiome are detoxing. We're going to talk about when your child's neuro detox pathways that have been limited. So especially if your child has MTHFR, these sort of challenges, you've had all these testing and you find out your child's detox pathways are limited. I'm going to do a whole episode on that too. But I'll tell you, this kind of care, nervous system focused chiropractic care, kicks in that immune system and detox pathways like you wouldn't believe. And we see kids literally dump out toxins through every outlet, we'll get into that, possible, all the time when they started getting adjusted. And that could be rough sledding. That could be a really tough time on their behavior and emotions. So long story short, before I get into the long story of the neurological detox, step by step, but a very simple, easy to understand, and will also, as always, leave you with, okay, my child's going through this. What do I need to know? What does it mean? And then the age-old, most important question we all ask as parents, what can I do about it? What can I do? Is there anything extra I can do to support my child get through this detox faster, get through this detox smoother, and most importantly, get to the other side where even the bad things that are actually good things are all net good things. So stay with us all the way through this one. And again, if you want the article version of it, I love writing. I actually enjoy writing even more so than video and podcast. And don't get me wrong, having the time of my life with this Experience Miracles podcast, our YouTube and all that sort of stuff, getting this content out there. But I, at least once on the podcast or on a live, I like to kind of sneak in and say, hey, if anybody wants to go read these articles that myself and my team, shout out to PJ and the crew, put together, we'd love it if you do, because we think they're pretty well put together articles. All right, let's get started. So let's just tackle the definition. Let's just tackle the perspective around a neurological detox. When kids, and actually adults can go through this too, when a child begins neurologically focused chiropractic care. And today's conversation is going to be very focused on neurological healing through this specialized kind of chiropractic, but it also applies to some other functional integrative sort of healing interventions as well. You may notice that there's this detox or release phase that you have to go through first. Now, quick sidebar, that's not really a sidebar. We are working every single day, and we've actually improved our clinical protocols massively over the last couple of years, from early on in my career and early on what we taught to other PX docs. And if they're on the directory, they're taught by me, they're taught by our docs, they're taught through our clinical protocols. We used to see a whole lot more neurological detoxes, but as it should always be, the longer you go into practice and you study the science and you pay attention to what's happening clinically, you look to get better, right? You look to improve your results with everything. So what I want to share with everyone is this is not a mandate. Not every kiddo has to go through a neurological detox. Many must. Many need to get actually better on the other side. But we've really improved our clinical protocols to A, see this a lot less than we used to, and B, get through it a lot quicker and smoother than we used to, and C, which is what we're doing right here, be able to communicate, articulate, and explain this to you not only during the detox, but what we do with our patients is we're usually proactive with this conversation. We really like to do everything in our practice very proactively. I think traditional, conventional medicine, the pediatrician, one of the primary reasons that we are so chronically sick is we're trained to not do anything about our health and be taking action or being responsive until we have to be reactive, right? So everything about chiropractic and our principles in natural health are very proactive. And I want to be proactive with this conversation with you too, including meeting those where maybe it is a little bit reactive and you're like, oh, my kid's going through this. And what does it mean? What is it? It can include temporary changes like fatigue, increased mucus drainage. So all of a sudden it looks like your kiddo is sick, like they picked up a virus or a bacteria or a bug. Most of the time, they didn't. We need mucus to actually expel and get pathogens and toxins and heavy metals and even parasites and these things out of the body. So often there's increased mucus drainage. All of a sudden, your kid's getting adjusted, they're sleeping better, but now, bam, they got a fever, they got mucus, they got skin breakouts, they've got digestive shifts. So most of the time, almost all the time, we see huge changes in sleep and digestion right out of the gates. And kiddos who are constipated and their gut is all messed up, oftentimes, and most of this time, we'll talk about the pendulum shift with this release and detox phase. They go from constipated and bound up, which is why toxins can't get out. And all of a sudden, bam, they're pooping 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6. This is a big poop conversation tonight, y'all, as we go through this. And so they're pooping all the time. And often it will shift all the way into diarrhea. Now, what a fun, glorious visual conversation we're having here on this one, right? It's essential to actual detoxification, which is so health promoting and important for kids in their development to get that stuff out. But what's probably the bumpiest part or the bumpiest kind of elements of a release phase and a detox phase that parents will report? Your child's emotional and behavioral system hops on a roller coaster, and it's like you start care, and it's like we gave you a free guest pass to Great America. If you live in Chicago or Six Flags, and all of a sudden you're like, woohoo, here we go. We are on a roller coaster. Now, these are vast majority of the time, these are very, very good because it's a sign that actual change and healing is happening. And the body, the brain, the gut, the immune system, the nervous system are working to restore balance. When a child is really, really chronically sick, dysregulated, stuck with autism spectrum, stuck with pandas and immune system challenges and POTS, all these different things. To get back to balance is not a smooth road because they're so far away from it. And there was all these different stages of illness and multi-system dysfunction that were on the path to chronic illness, right? So the journey to chronic illness involves all these ups and downs and insides outs. And we've talked about this. Actually, chiropractic is the leading profession by far to explain what's really actually happening with detoxes, because we've talked about for 100 plus years what's called retracing. Now, in today's language and through this one, we're going to talk more about rebalancing and reorganizing, but that's exactly what's happening. And so for the body, which is chronically sick and has multi-systems, so think of a child with autism, their gut's a mess, their immune system's a mess, their inflammation is a mess, their respiratory lymphatic system's a mess, their sensory motors, so their motor milestones, gross and fine motor, their speech, their behavior, their emotions, their cognition, their sleep is a mess. If all of that is a mess, the journey to get it back online is going to be like whack-a-mole. Some stuff's going to get better and some stuff's going to have to get worse and detox and clear out and release to get better. So what's actually happening, and I want you to change these words in your perspective with this because it's really real. What's happening in the vast majority of the time in what looks like detox, what looks like regression during this detox and release phase is actually neurological restoration, rebalancing, and reorganization, or what we like to call functional root cause healing. Okay, let's break it down into systems. Let's talk about what's happening to the nervous system itself. So the autonomic nervous system itself when we kick in neurological healing. First, we got to go backwards to understand what we're working with. The vast majority, I'm not even going to say vast majority of this one. Every single child we work with who has chronic illness is stuck in a chronic fight or flight sympathetic dominant state. This is called subluxation, dysautonomia, dysregulation are these terms that say, okay, this sympathetic survival protection state has run the show. If you ever see a child locked into level 3 autism, that's what it is, right? You can kind of see this appearance. They're just stuck in fight or flight. They're stuck in fear. They're stuck in withdrawal. They're stuck in protective mode 24/7. They can't get into growth mode. They can't get into healing mode. Well, the first thing we activate is exactly that. What's called the parasympathetic relaxation, regulation, detoxification. So the only way to combat sympathetic dominance, fight or flight, stuck sympathetic tone, is you actually have to activate the vagus nerve and parasympathetic. So this rebalancing and stimulating to the side of the nervous system that has been suppressed ends up doing exactly what we want, which is shutting down and cooling off the sympathetic protective survival mode. So when a child goes into healing, they need more sleep. So they sleep a ton. They need to detox, get toxins out of the body. So it comes out through mucus, it comes out through skin, it comes out through poop. They need to have improved digestion, immune system, all these things. So it'll start to clear out this built up inflammation, toxins, and stress patterns that have been in there as we kick in the vagus nerve tone, as we kick in the parasympathetic system. And then you get to finally see the sympathetic fight or flight, stuck, shut down, suppressed system chill out and open up. And when it opens up, and stuff has to come out, including even behaviors and emotions. But I'll come back to this. Let's stay on toxins, because I know you moms and you rock star dads out there, you have learned the truth. You have learned that toxic load, early, often exposure to toxins for our kids, whether they are inhaled, our environment, cleaners, all these other sort of things, so coming through the respiratory system, ingested, that's my way of saying diet, food, different chemicals that get into the body through our food sources, which again, let's clean this up. There's such a good movement for that happening to get all these chemicals, preservative toxins out of our freaking food supply for our kids. So they should not be inhaled. They're everywhere. Household cleaner, school, just look at all the crap they use, right? In these places. Then ingested, food, digestion, and injected. So vaccinations, medications, antibiotics, these are real issues to the perfect storm. And so what happens? Our kids are exposed to more toxins and more crap more early and more often than ever before. But hang with me. I know most of you that listen in on our platform know that already, and you've done everything to address it. You've stopped having toxins anywhere in your environment, anywhere in your food, anywhere going into your child through medical interventions. You're just done with that. You were done with it before you even started, but they talked you into it. I totally understand. We've been there, okay? So you've stopped the toxins coming in. And what about this? What about families who are tuned in right now and you're literally clicked on this one because you're like, I want my child to detox. They don't even get a freaking fever. They don't sweat. They don't get this stuff out. Who knows? Maybe you've done the gut mapping and the testing and you can find out, you have found out that your child is literally littered with heavy metals, toxins, bacteria, parasites. So what have you done? Awesomely, again, you've stopped the toxins coming in, but you've probably gone bananas, right? On supplements, detox kits, binders, you name it, to try and get into the body and get this crud out. And it still hasn't come out. Because before, when we really break down the perfect storm, and if you haven't listened to the episode that really teaches the perfect storm, I'll have the team link it in this one. The perfect storm shows us, just in its simplest form, that toxic exposure, antibiotics, all the things, they are third on the sequential list of what actually causes autism and chronic illness in kids. First is emotional stress, neurological stress from high stress fertility, high stress pregnancy. And second is brainstem, vagus nerve, which is where the vagus nerve comes from. And all of this sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system regulation, air traffic control tower is in the neck, the upper neck, the brainstem area. And the second trigger of chronic disease in kids is physical, neurological damage, injury to the brainstem and the vagus nerve, creating subluxation, dysregulation, and dysautonomia from birth interventions like forceps, vacuum, cord wrap, breech, C-section, induction, you name it. And so if you're putting this all together, and you can tell I'm trying to slow down my cadence so that you can see this entire picture that goes beyond toxins, but also includes toxins majorly. And if you've done everything physiologically, holistically, functional, integrated medicine to get these toxins, to get those metals, to get those parasites out of your child's body, and you know that your kiddo is riddled with inflammation, and you know that that inflammation has to do with their gut, their immune system, and there's a gut-brain connection. There's blood flow connection. There's vagus nerve connection. There's CSF flow connection to the brain. And so now you're knowing and worrying and wanting it to not happen, that that inflammation is getting into your child's brain, and you still can't get those toxins out. That's what happens when your kids start to get adjusted. And it's crazy bumpy and it's crazy messy, like literally messy. You might not get your cleaning deposit back on your Airbnb if you're staying with us for a neurological intensive, and this is happening in a few families who are listening. I love you and I love your kids, and we miss you. We sent you home, and you know that I'm talking about you. Because when kids go through this neurological detox, what's happening is these toxins and these metals and these parasites, they're finally being unhinged, loosened up, and the nervous system, which controls digestive motility, detoxification, and immune system and inflammatory modulation, now the nervous system is coming back online. And think of it like this. The nervous system basically wakes up after going through this storm, because when the nervous system is subluxated, locked into sympathetic dominance, it shuts down perception. It shuts down awareness. It's literally just locked in. That's the original definition of autism, or kind of description, locked in syndrome. Well, that's actually what's happening to the nervous system. It's asleep at the wheel. It's drunk on the job. It doesn't even know from a brain-based perception that these toxins and these bacteria and this strep overgrowth and all of these things are in there. It doesn't know it's there. And even if it does, the nervous system is so downtrodden and dysregulated, it can't do anything about it. So flip all that on its head. So when we flip on the switch and we start getting your child under neurologically focused care, and especially if it's intensive and high frequency and things are moving fast, the body will look to heal fast. And the nervous system, when it gets activated and stimulated, especially the vagus nerve and parasympathetics, that's its job, to find the bad guys and get them out of there. Well, they're bad guys. They're toxins. They're neuroinflammatory. They create more issues. So on their way out, they don't go peacefully. So it's awesome. We celebrate like crazy. Like we literally give awards when constipated kids start taking dumps, when chronically congested kids can finally get mucus up and get it out of there. So many of our kids with autism never get sick. That's actually not good. They don't get a fever. They don't express the illness. That's not good. They need to. And so when we get the vagus nerve going, the parasympathetic system going, and we shut down sympathetic overload, and all these toxins and all this crap is coming out, what it does to your child's behavior and emotions for this short season is it's messy, okay? Because they don't feel good, because they're not actually like sick like it's bad. They're sick in that it's good, and nobody feels good emotionally. Nobody, behaves well when they're sick. The joke we always insert right here is the man cold, right? Or the man flu. Like what is the emotional status of an adult when they're sick, right? Like, oh, the world is ending. And it's like, you have like one nostril slightly congested. I think you're going to make it, But honestly, when you feel like crap, you feel like crap, and your emotions and your behavior go all over the place. So when nervous system function is restored, it allows the body to finally release all these stuck, stored toxins. And truthfully, it happens fast, and often it happens all at once, because when the nervous system gets rolling and the nervous system finally gets regulated, connected, and communicating to the gut and communicating to the immune system again, and the lymphatic system and the respiratory system, it is spring freaking cleaning out the garage, cleaning out the basement, cleaning out everything. Let's go. So increased mucus drainage, skin breakouts, digestive shifts to looser stools, increases in fever, sweating. This is the toxic buildup finally clearing out of the body. And I could talk about it for hours because it's so good long-term. Okay. Next section, the emotional and behavioral detox. We've talked a lot about how that section is really often the trigger that leads to some of this emotion and behavioral dysregulation detox and some sensory stuff getting worse. Sometimes we can see motor tics and seizures get worse and kind of start to be irritated more and off track, more frequent a little bit in the beginning because those detoxes are happening, because those toxins are coming out. But also this, we've got two more things to talk about just in the way the vagus nerve and the autonomic nervous system regulates our emotions, our behavior, and our socialization, and our auditory and sensory processing and visual processing. And then we'll go into sensory motor function. So if your child has had some gross motor or fine motor delays, we'll talk about how those can kind of go sideways for a short season, what it looks like on the outside, while they're actually moving forward and getting better on the inside. So emotions and behavior. The reason that this will happen, and when the body physically detoxes, the brain and emotions can go through that period as well, and your child can become more emotional, experience their sleep being a little upside down, and have these short periods of increased hypersensitivity, stimming behaviors, and so forth. Again, is because the brain is rewiring, reorganizing, and rebalancing. So if there's stress hormones and sympathetics have been running the show, that is not the neuroplastic path that the brain wants to take. A little bug joining me here again on this one. So what happens is the nervous system is going through these changes, and it knows that it's been off track. It knows that development has been delayed. So what will happen is it will speed up to catch up, okay? I don't know if any of you are as nerdy as me and you ever take notes on any of my podcasts, but if there was a note to take, especially when it comes to getting your neurodevelopmentally delayed kiddo back online, back on track, and back in balance with their development, often what happens to behavior, socialization, communication, and these things developmentally, when care kicks in, is they need to speed up in order to catch up. Or they just need to wake up certain functions that your child missed out on when they were locked into autism or locked into subluxation in the perfect storm. So the best example we can give you all the time is there is 3 types of kids that we see in our practice, okay? We do not love to play the diagnosis game. I know I'm talking on here all the time, autism, ADHD, this sort of stuff, but we only use those terms to give you some relatability because those are the familiar terms to you. And you'll notice, like if we were ever to run a word count here on the podcast, we use condition-based language, medical, diagnostic. We can't stand labeling kids because labels limit. And so what we do all the time is we use that language as little as we possibly can. And then we use this nervous system, root cause healing language, and really understanding the mechanisms to it much more often so that you can see through your child's diagnosis to what's really causing it and what you can do to get them out of it. So if there's 3 nicknames that we've kind of created over the years, and these 3 things we're going to rip through if you've never heard them, you're going to kind of laugh. It's going to be that, ha ha, that's a pretty funny way to say it. And then you're going to go, ha ha ha, oh my, that's my kiddo. Because I've used these terms for my entire career, and they are designed or I guess created to make sense of your child's challenges and the expressions of their challenges, yes, but really, stay with me. We really want to introduce these 3 terms to get you to understand what's going on with the root cause and what's happening with your child's nervous system that then may spit out or cause the medical world to give them condition, diagnosis X, Y, or Z. Okay, first most common kid we take care of is called the raging bull kiddo, okay? You are tuned in to a 43-year-old raging bull kiddo who is now well-adjusted, perfectly nervous system regulated, vagus nerve bussin'. So my ADHD goes from I can't even say it as a disorder, or to a full incredible blessing, okay? So the raging bull kiddo doesn't sit still, doesn't stay quiet, and is always moving. The second case is what we call drunken bull kiddos. Drunken bull kiddos, old school, again, just to bring up some relatability through diagnostic criteria, would be the old school ADD, right? The kid that doesn't have the H or the impulsivity and hyperactivity, but just struggles to focus, struggles to move their body, struggles with hand-eye coordination, struggles with slower processing speeds, reading and these sort of things, comprehension, memory, following directions. So the drunken bull can show up that way. The drunken bull also shows up in their motor planning and dysfunction, where maybe they can walk and they can run, but they look like they've had 6 IPAs whilst doing it, okay? And if you're hearing that and you're like, well, that's a bit harsh, Dr. Joe. If your child has this drunken bull motor planning challenges, every parent that has that and wants help with that knows what I'm talking about if I just use a real life analogy, okay? And third, I don't think I have to put a disclaimer on here, but I'm not advocating for, 6-year-olds to drink. I don't have to say that, do I? Okay, that's the moment of the podcast where I'm like, okay, these are the things you don't say out loud, Tony, but then you do, and you're like, what are you going to do? So the drunken bull is there as well. Number 3, unfortunately, we see this way more often than we did even a few years ago, but we then see the exhausted bull. So that's the child who is just shut down, withdrawn, and their nervous system really honestly isn't even in sympathetic overdrive anymore. They're just shut down, period. Their whole nervous system is just regressed and is shut down. What happens with neurological detoxes for exhausted, drunken bulls is they have to go back through raging bull development, because raging bull actually isn't bad. When your child first learns how to crawl, what do they do with crawling? Do it 24/7, 365. When they learn how to climb the stairs and you celebrate it and you take videos and you text it out to everyone and post it on Instagram, then you go, oh my gosh, tape mattresses to the wall, put up Fort Knox gates. Because once a child learns how to do something, this is how God designed this development. They're like, I'm going to do this 24/7, 365. This is actually called neuroplasticity. They need to do a ton of new things. They need to do, quote unquote, an excessive amount of new things. So when they learn to talk, they talk all the time. When they learn to run, they run all the time. When they learn to do these things and they go out and become social. You ever seen a preschooler? Preschoolers don't have cliques, okay? Preschoolers, everybody is their best friend. Even social emotional development works this way. This is how the brain works in its early stages. More is better. They're just going to go out and they're going to seek an excessive, and it's not excessive at all in the right stages of development, this massive amount of input and action. So when a child goes through subluxation and dysregulation and they get off track developmentally, they missed out on these things. Their motor system missed out on it. Their speech missed out on it. Their socialization missed out on it. So when a 5-year-old is acting like a 2-year-old, or a 7-year-old is acting like a 3-year-old in terms of their behavior and they're just raging bullness. So when the drunken bull, exhausted bull becomes the raging bull, but they're 7, it's tough. It totally is. It looks like a detox. It looks like it's bad because everybody's like, this child, physical stature and everything else. Oh, they're 7. They should be in 1st or 2nd grade learning how to, sit still a little bit and that. And they look like they're a toddler or a preschooler in terms of always moving, always talking, and always sensory seeking. What if that's not bad? What if that's necessary for that child's brain and nervous system at the stage of maturation and development that it needs to go back to get through, to get synced up and learn those behaviors and developmental windows later on? Guys, I could do a whole 20-hour talk on the neurological detox, and we could get into the weeds like we are here with this one, and we could teach you with virtually every single thing that you experience when your child goes through a neurological detox, whether it's the more simpler stuff, like getting rid of toxins, sleep improvements, digestive improvements, fever, getting things out of the body. That's usually the stuff that every parent knows, hey, actually, we need to celebrate that. This is awesome. This is good news. But this stuff is different. When our child is looking like they're regressing with their social, their behavior, their emotional, their sensory function, they're not. They're reorganizing. They're playing catch up. They are going back through developmental surges and windows and milestones that they either missed out on entirely or went through incompletely. They're going to play catch up, and it happens fast, and you'll have this kind of show up as a detox, okay? So, is last point with this, we talked a ton about the gut, the microbiome, how we get toxins out. We might even kick it into diarrhea. We might, and you get die-off. You literally get natural die-off as you go through this as well. It's not a setback. It's healing that is happening. The neurological soft signs are there. The very last chapter, I mean it, and then we'll close into solution and action with this one. What about the motor system? So we see this. Now, this one's going to be a little trickier. We're on a podcast here, so I can't necessarily, act this out or visualize it or, kind of show you any videos for this. But what is actually underneath the majority of chronic illness in kids, especially if it's neurosensory. So it's autism, it's ADHD, it's sensory challenges, it's behavior, it's learning, it's those sort of things. It's not actually the gut and the immune system and inflammation that are the most off track and dysfunctional. The system that is more connected to brain-based function than even the gut and the microbiome is what's called the sensory motor system. We'll shorten it to motor system for the rest of this so that it's more recognizable to you guys as parents. So the motor system starts with the big muscles, right? So a child is supposed to go through these motor milestones: head and neck control, tummy time, kind of pushing up, rolling over, sitting up, army crawl, then regular crawl, then furniture cruise, then walk, then climb, then run. And all of this is supposed to happen. Again, for my note takers out there, even if there's one of you, please send me the notes. See if this made sense, because my notes on my computer are there. It's supposed to happen sequentially, and it's supposed to be smooth. So what will happen if a child has gross motor delays, significant fine motor issues, and speech delays that are quite obvious, and I mean this, I have to say what I need to say here. They have to be so bad that even a conventional pediatrician notices them. Now, neuroplastic, brain-based development, do we want our kids' health and well-being to be a A-, B+, B-? No. I'm telling you, if we were to grade out sensory, motor, tone, coordination, and what's called motor planning, and if you were to use a pediatric chiropractors who are neuro-movement-based specialists or an advanced neurologically focused PT/OT to assess a child's movement patterns, promise you, we would give them completely different grades than what a conventional pediatrician. The amount of real sensory motor, perfect storm brewing, brain-based problems that pediatricians miss that are grossly, readily, it has to be torticollis and plagiocephaly that is flatter than, the table you're eating dinner on tonight, That is how bad it has to be. And you may seem like, geez, you're being over the top. You have to be. You got to call a spade a spade. The amount of autism, sensory, neurological challenges that are brewing in plain sight for our infants and our toddlers who are primarily only being checked for neurodevelopment by general pediatricians who are loosely effective at this at best, it's really upsetting because it's actually the sensory tone, sensory motor, tone and coordination that is the window into the brain more than anything else. So let me bring it into the detox conversation. What happens when there's subluxation and nervous system dysfunction is some muscles get wound up and they become spastic and hypertonic, and some muscles become weak, hypotonic, weak core, those sort of things. Every child who is subluxated and dysregulated has both. Doesn't mean that every therapy team will find both, but they're dealing with hypertonicity, usually in the neck, the brainstem, and the neurospinal system. And that leads to hypotonia and ataxia and all these other sort of things with the core and with some other things. And then tension again will build in the lower extremities, hence toe walking and those sort of things. So when we start to get a kiddo adjusted, the first place that we actually go to work, because it ties into gut, immune, and everything else. So all these systems on this episode here, I went one by one, right? I separated, we talk about gut, we talk about immune system, we talk about toxins, we talk about emotions, and then we talk about now motor planning here. I'm only talking about it in separate sections so that you can kind of see these different windows. The nervous system doesn't see them as separate functions. They are all tethered together and interlaced and intercoordinated together. And so when you improve one and recalibrate one, it's going to change all the others as well. And they're actually changing in the positive direction, even when for a few days or a few weeks during these neurodetoxes and release phases, it looks like your child's motor tone, coordination, and just walking and running, they get drunken-er on the way to getting smoother and stronger, because you're hitting reset, not only on these subluxations, but what happens with subluxations is subluxation over time within motor planning and development creates what are called compensations. Now, compensations confuse the brain. It's these subluxations with compensations that lead to nervous system brain-based dysregulation. This is literally what causes behavior issues, emotional issues, focus and concentration issues, and actually what we know about sensory motor dysfunction, subluxation, and dysregulation. It's also the underpinnings of motor tics and seizures, okay? So I'm gonna do a whole nother episode about seizures and about motor tics and how they may detox. I'm going to introduce it here just a little bit. And there's a whole nother article. There's actually a seizure-specific article coming out as well about that has to do with detox and these things, because it's a whole nother animal and it lives in the sensory motor system. Compensations are these neurological motor patterns that the brain and nervous system put into play to force development to happen and override subluxation and nervous system dysfunction, because the brain is programmed for that. The child must develop. They've got to move. Movement is life. So what happens is movement, even more so than gut function and immune function, gets completely distorted and discombobulated. But every time everybody tells you it's okay, because if you look at the standard CDC, AAP, pediatrician motor chart, they can walk, they can run. Yeah, but take a look at it. Is it smooth? Is it efficient? Is it sequential? Is it coordinated? Or is it super messy? And that movement, neuromotor, tone, coordination, gait patterns, posture, are the cleanest, purest window into brain function. The brain, I'll say it one last time and then we'll close this one down with the solutions and what to do when your child, how you can help your child get through this faster and smoother. The neuromotor system is a more accurate, direct window into brain function. Cerebellum, amygdala, hippocampus, prefrontal cortex, you name it, is more dependent upon motor input. It's called proprioception and mechanoreception is what we've been talking about in this last chapter. It's more dependent and tied to that than even gut function and nourishment, okay? Gut-brain connection, essential. Inflammation, don't want to get it into the brain. Neuromotor, sensory, motor, physical movement input into the brain, it's the most essential nutrient that the brain has by a million miles, especially a developing child. So often what's happening if your kiddo gets a little sideways during this release and detox phase, it's actually the neuromotor system rewiring and reorganizing to end up in a much more optimal, smooth, symmetrical manner that the brain wants and needs for the rest of life. So it is awesome. All right, here's the list. How to support your child through the detox phase. First, it's essential to support yourself. Okay. It's essential to have this podcast, these articles, and these sort of things to go, okay, help me make sense of this. What is happening? Is this good? I think it's good. Because usually parents' guts are, okay, this has to happen, right? They just need us to explain the mechanisms and the neurophysiology behind it. So first off, know that it's temporary. The first thing I would address is just perspective and understanding. Reach out to us. Ask more questions. If this has one question within the question that we didn't answer, reach out to us. Send us a DM on Instagram or Facebook, or talk to your PX doc, even better if you're already directly under care, and talk through this with them, okay? Because it's essential for your parasympathetic rest, digest, and regulate system to know that this is good, not bad. So first off, know they're temporary, and know there is a very important, helpful, healing reason for these detoxes. That's essential first step. Second, stay consistent with the care plan. Stay consistent with the adjustments. These adjustments are improving regulation, optimizing vagus nerve function, and opening up those detox pathways. Once this is started, stay the course, or even talk to your doc and increase frequency. Usually when a detox is happening, we're already on a high frequency, and that's why we're doing it, to get this to happen, to get this healing engaged and get through it as fast as possible. But sometimes we can actually up-level that frequency a little more to help get through the detox and release phase even faster, even smoother. Talk to your PX doc about that. Number 2 on here, support the drainage pathways. Encourage hydration, movement, lymphatic drainage. You can do light massage and these things for your kiddo, and gentle detox things like an Epsom salt bath and magnesium. Number 3, and this really should be number 1, prioritize sleep and rest. Make your life as boring as possible during this stage of healing. Stay off of therapies. Don't even send them to school if you don't want to. We do this all the time. It doesn't mean that they can't get back to therapy. They will in a week or two. And not only will they not get back to PT, OT, ABA, whatever it may be, when they get back, they're going to return with the most regulated, connected, adaptable, functional nervous system they've ever had. So if you try and force through a detox and we keep them in too many therapies and we keep too much pressure on them, it actually makes the detox last longer and get a little bumpier. So really prioritize sleep and rest and feel totally free. And you can blame us entirely with the rest of the team on there. They can reach out to us. We can explain this to them. So if the teachers, if the PTs, if the OTs, if the speech therapists, actually a lot of you I know are listening, guys, if your kiddos that you're taking care of are going to start with neurologically focused chiropractic care, you might want to pre-plan a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a breather, just to make room for this deep foundational neurological restoration and healing that is essential to them getting the most out of learning and therapy later on. So prioritize sleep and rest. It's huge. I'm the biggest advocate of giving our children the time and the space to heal, okay? And no, I'm not saying hold space for that, because you got to remember, real quick, last joke, I can't believe I've gone this long. I think I've had 2 or 3. But I hear people, so I'm a chiropractor, okay? Perfect time, very end to sneak this in. Who knows who's still with us, okay? As a chiropractor, we are in the land of hippies, okay? It's chiropractic, it's yoga, it's walking barefoot in nature with big hats and dangly earrings and, essential oils all over sort of thing. Where am I going with this? For a lot of my life, I have had people say to me that I will hold space for that. And I still don't know what the heck they are talking about. As a raging bull dude who grew up in Iowa, and even when I'm at yoga class, and I love to go to yoga class, but I'm like, hey, can we just skip this beginning, slow-moving part? And then at the end, when y'all shavasana, going all shavasana or whatever, how about I just grab my mat, roll out of here, I got things to do. And I know all of you are thinking right now that know yoga and healing very well, and you're like, this is why you need it, bro. You should pay attention to these things. And there may come a time in my life. And so what I'd like you to do is to hold space for the opportunity that I will chill out one day. Just kidding. But do you see, I think I actually used the term, oh my gosh, for the first time in my life, I think I used, through sarcasm, the term hold space accurately. We'll see. I'm going to Google it later on. I just figured out what gaslighting is over the last couple of months too, thanks to our young intern and doc team and my teenagers. And that was a many-month study. It took me a long time, lots of Google searches, needed to have a lot of examples put forth in front of me as to what gaslighting is. So if you all already knew what hold space means, and you could apply it to this to help your child, get through the detox a little quicker and better, more power to you. Let's collectively, we'll hold space for that. Okay, I'm done there now. Number 4, nourish the body. You're going to want anti-inflammatory, so good hydration, good diet. And then number 5 is actually what I think I started with number 1, or maybe it was like the foundational thing. Trust the process. This is not a detox. This is not regression. This is progress. This is breakthrough. This is a launch pad for your child's nervous system, immune system, digestive system, behavior to get better. It's not stuck. It's not going backwards. It's actually playing catch up and going forward. It'll look bumpy. It'll smell messy often even. You'll go through more Kleenexes and more toilet flushes and more diapers depending upon the age and development of your kiddo. But it's not a time to slow down. It's a time to speed up, lean in, stay consistent, and trust the process. You are literally just a few steps away from the most profound healing breakthroughs with more sleep, calmer emotions, better digestion, return development, just cognition, speech, emotional development, and maturation. Always turns on at rocket pace to exactly what parents are looking for right on the other side of these detoxes. Like the biggest wins, the biggest miracles are coming right on the other side of the messy middle. I promise you, I promise you, I promise you, this is how it works. The only way that we see not getting to the other side is if we back off of care and we don't stick to the consistency or increase it. The only way that we don't get through the detox and we don't get through the plateau is if we add too many other therapies and we overload an already overloaded and dysregulated system. And it's easy to do. When it's bumpy, you might feel like backing off. Don't. Stay on the gas. A little Talladega Nights or Days of Thunder reference right there, okay? Get through the smoke. Get through it. And number 2, don't feel like it means, oh, we're missing something. I got to add something else to this. That adding to it may disrupt an already kind of delicate healing process. So it's really something that we got to stay in, stay consistent, stay through, and the breakthrough is coming on the other side. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Do you have a question that you would like to submit? Either send it to support@pxdocs.com with the subject Ask Dr. Tony, or head on over to our socials @PXDocs, where you can submit your question in our stories every single week. Every kid counts and every family counts, so let's leave no questions left unanswered. If you loved this episode and you want to help us reach more kids, we would so appreciate if you left a review and a rating on your favorite platform. God bless. Be well. We'll see you on the next one.